Welcome back to the Railsplitter Woodshop, and today's video is on our bandsaws. So we have this big, beautiful Oliver bandsaw here that is very old. Again, when I date these machines back, they all date back into the 30s, and I'll show you here. So you can see here, Oliver Machinery, Grand Rapids, Michigan. When I look up these serial numbers, they all date back into the 30s and 40s. But man, this is an awesome machine. I've actually never measured it. I'm guessing that's 7 foot tall. And we typically dedicate this bandsaw for resawing, which is being able to turn wood this way and make that cut. So this is a really good saw for that. I don't like to put a lot of pressure on this saw. I like to keep my cut straight. The other thing we've been using it is when students bring in like a log or something like that. We've been using this basically just to kind of mill it up. So I'm gonna show you a few pointers on this saw and we'll get going. So our start and stop is here. And again, same with these old machines, when I hit my start button, if I hit stop, this blade runs for probably 60 seconds, maybe 90 seconds, a minute and a half. So I want you to stay by the saw after it has been shut off. Show you how big this wheel is though. So this is a really cool machine. So on my guide here, I like to keep my guide just about a 1/4 inch or so above. So on these paddles here that I'm gonna need to be resawing, you can see they're not going to fit under that guide wheel. So what I need to do is make my adjustment here, and then I've just been using this by hand. You can see if I turn this here, I bring that up, I lock this back in here, and then now I've got enough room to go ahead and make my cut. Final thing on this bandsaw is, to my knowledge, I don't know that these saws had a fence that came with them. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. So what I've been doing is I got a really nice straight board that I can use as a straight edge. And again, this isn't gonna be a finished cut. I'm giving myself, this will be for a resaw. And so I've just been using clamps and a really good straight board, and then I just bring this to the thickness that I need and I run them through. And away we go. This is a Grizzly 17-inch bandsaw that we use for pretty much being able to cut curves, inside curves, getting inside of any of those lines. This saw is on its own dust collector here. We actually, in this back corner of the shop, we just have this separate, I think that's a Jet. Nope, Grizzly, sorry. Grizzly, it's an old Grizzly 2 horsepower dust collector. But, so I'll keep you tuned up over here. Again, I'm not gonna turn the dust collector on just so you can kind of hear me as I'm talking, but a few things just to keep in mind. This wheel raises and lowers our guides, our bandsaw guides here. And so as I lower this here, you can see it raises and lowers. So typically my general rule of thumb is I want this guide, about a finger's width, maybe a little bit more, above the board that we're cutting. So that will help with deflection of the blade. If you can see here. Kind of keeps my hands away, so there we go. Okay, so a few things about this particular saw. Again, it's going to be spinning around. I'm actually going to bring these guides up just a little bit. Okay, so as this blade is coming around, what we're going to use this saw for is if we have a quick, easy cut to make, okay, we can make straight cuts that don't have to be perfectly square. We can do those types of cuts here. The thing that I like to do with my students when we do this woodshop tour is I like to give them just a kind of a curved line and have them cut that out. Now, a few things that I want to point out is that as I'm cutting through, if I have to keep in mind what side is my keep side. Okay, so let's say this is the board I wanted and I was putting this shape, so I'm keeping this side. Then I want to make sure that I never get into this line on this side of the line. Okay, so I want to stay on a healthy side over here. Anything I do over here can get cut, so that's not a big deal. But as I'm bending around, depending on the size of blade I have, this board, as I try and make this curve, it's probably going to have a hard time following this curve exactly, okay, because I have a 1/2-inch blade in here. So what I will do is sometimes I'll bring it right to here and bring it to there, and then I'll back it back out, and then I'll come in and cut back at a different angle. I don't have to do this all in one pass. Secondly, this is a really good beginner's tip. When I'm making this inside curve and cut, I can make what's called relief cuts. So I can come out here and I can do a bunch of cuts and then bring my blade back through, and as I go through, it will take relief off of the blade as I make these cuts, and it allows me to make that inside curve. So let's see what I can do here. One last final safety tip that I want to point out, and this is for all of my students specifically. I never want us on this side of the blade with my hands here pushing this way towards the blade. If I were to slip, if I'm in here cutting and I get in here and I'm pushing really hard, if I slip, I'm slipping this way. That's bad, okay? So you'll watch me, I'm gonna keep my hands at a safe area around on the back side of the saw. If for some reason I ever need to be putting pressure here, I will go and get some kind of push stick to help me put this pressure back here where I need to without putting my hand there. I never want to be in this area pushing this way towards. I can work out here, I can work out here, here, and I'll even, this is a little bit more advanced, but I will, in certain situations, I'll come on the back side here and work this way and pull it. It's typically not ideal, and that's normally only when I'm resawing, but whatever I can do to stay out of harm's way is what I'm looking for. Okay, so you can see as I started to make that curve, that blade doesn't want to turn tight like that. So what I can do, since I'm keeping this side, and I'm cutting this side, now I can change my angle. So as you can see here, I'm gonna get into this inside corner and I'm gonna have a harder time following that curve, and I'm gonna get myself caught. So what I can do is I can do a bunch of release cuts. So now I can either go this way,
or if I'm not able to go that way, I'm going to go back around this way. If you hear that blade binding like that, you hear that when I go there and I'm trying to turn, you can hear me putting pressure on that blade. Just back it back off, attack it at a different angle. Give it time.
Also, see how I'm using the board to push these scrap pieces away? So secondly, so I've got a little bit of this inside stuff. Well, I can use my bandsaw to shave some. If I go, I can work it left or right. That's fine to do. Or if I had to take a piece.
Angle off here. Okay.
So you can see I left my line. So you can see I left my line, and now I can come back with either a rasp or some sandpaper, and I can clean up that edge and clean up that corner. So that's a good way to show how to cut inside circles, outside circles, whatever we're trying to do. But the bandsaw is a really nice versatile saw that we can use in a lot of different ways. There's just a few safety things to keep in mind. But when we're cutting curves, this is the saw we use. When we want to resaw, we'll go use the big boy. Five questions. Number one, what is the big bandsaw used for? What technique do we use it for? Number two, what is the little bandsaw used for? What types of cuts do we do on that? Number three, what are relief cuts? What are they? Why would you do them? Don't want the English teachers upset with me out here. Number four, true or false? What safety technique must you do when you shut the saws off? What is one thing, the most important thing that you need to remember to do when the saw is shut off? And number five, approximately, how high should the guides be above the workpiece? Mainly on the smaller bandsaw when we're using it. How high should we have the guides above our workpiece? So, hey, I hope you all are staying safe, staying productive, keep making.